Hi, and welcome to Debt Talk in 60 Seconds, where we answer the most frequently asked questions on Canadian debt and insolvency topics. Consumer proposal versus bankruptcy. 2 ways to tackle awful debt problems and get out of debt. When it comes to debt, Canadians experiencing financial difficulties have the option of filing either a consumer proposal or filing for bankruptcy. Now, these 2 processes are very serious processes. There are differences between the 2, so I am going to tell you the issues regarding a consumer proposal versus bankruptcy. Both options are legally binding and provide the debtor with immediate protection when they file either personal bankruptcy or a consumer proposal. But that essentially is where the similarities end. For example, in personal bankruptcy, that is the debtor's decision alone. In a consumer proposal, the creditors get to vote on whether or not they are going to accept the proposal. The voting process occurs 45 days after the filing of the consumer proposal. Each creditor gets 1 vote for every dollar amount that is owed. You have to have a majority of the creditors voting in order for it to pass. If you have a dissenting creditor who votes against the proposal, as long as you have the required majority, the proposal gets crammed down on them and they are forced to accept it because the majority rules. In either a consumer proposal or bankruptcy, the person is required to make full disclosure to the licensed insolvency trustee of all their assets and liabilities. The Canadian bankruptcy and insolvency legislation says that a consumer proposal has to offer the creditors a better alternative than the person's bankruptcy. In an accepted consumer proposal, the debtor is required to make monthly payments. The payments that they make in a consumer proposal will be as agreed based on to the terms of the proposal. The amount of the monthly payment and the total amount cannot change once the consumer proposal is accepted. Anyone who owes $250,000 or less, other than for any debt secured against their home, and cannot afford to pay their monthly bills is a candidate. In order to have a successful proposal, the person should be employed so that they have a verifiable income stream. The person will work with the trustee to come up with a budget that allows the person to pay their ongoing living expenses and provide for the monthly consumer proposal payments. Alternatively, if a relative is willing to put up the lump sum amount of the consumer proposal up front, that is also acceptable in cases where the person's income is not sufficient to make the consumer proposal payments. If you're having trouble each month paying your bills when due, you may want to consider a consumer proposal. It lets you avoid bankruptcy and makes a payment plan for you to pay a portion of what you owe your creditors. In such a proposal, you pay back part of your debt and have the rest forgiven. That lets you start over fresh, debt-free, and stress-free. There are the pros. The cons are twofold. 1, it is an insolvency process, and 2, it will have an effect on the person's credit rating by giving them an R7 credit rating, which will stay on their credit report for 3 years from the date they complete the proposal. However, if your creditors are hounding you for non-payment and are either threatening to or are actually taking you to court, you do need to stop them and get back on a sound financial footing. A consumer proposal will do that for you. Now that I have explained what a consumer proposal is and how it works, let's talk about bankruptcy so that you can see the differences. In bankruptcy, the person hands over their assets to the trustee and does not get to keep them other than those protected under provincial law or your RRSP. In bankruptcy, the debtor may have to make monthly payments to the trustee. The trustee would explain up front to the person what each set of monthly payments would look like. It is also possible that in a bankruptcy, the person would not be required to make monthly payments. It all depends on the debtor's circumstances. In a bankruptcy, The payments are made based on the Superintendent of Bankruptcy's surplus income guidelines. There is a threshold, and if their income is above the threshold, a portion of that income gets paid monthly to the trustee. In bankruptcy, the person is assigned an R9 credit rating, which will remain on their credit report for 6 years from the date they complete their personal bankruptcy. Are there advantages to bankruptcy? No. The only reason you would choose bankruptcy versus consumer proposal is if you cannot afford to make consumer proposal payments. Disadvantages of bankruptcy are many. 1, you lose most or all of your assets. 2, if you have to make surplus income payments, those monthly payments may be more than in a consumer proposal. 3, either your creditors or the trustee can oppose your discharge from bankruptcy. If that happens, you have to go to bankruptcy court and explain why you should get an unconditional discharge. The court may set conditions, usually paying more money, in order to get your discharge. And 4, your credit rating is tainted worse in bankruptcy versus consumer proposal. In both bankruptcy and consumer proposal, there are 2 counseling sessions. The counseling sessions deal with how to create a budget, track your income, expenses, good debt versus bad debt. That is the same in either process. The Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act is not a punitive process. It is really a rehabilitative one. Either a consumer proposal or bankruptcy says something went sideways, what happened, let's fix it, move on, and rehabilitate the person through the process. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions at all, either about this video or anything else at all, feel free to shoot me an email, give me a phone call. I would love to speak with you. Consumer proposal versus bankruptcy. 2 ways to tackle awful debt problems and get out of debt. When it comes to debt, Canadians experiencing financial difficulties have the option of filing either a consumer proposal or filing for bankruptcy. Now, these